So, I'm gonna have to be honest with you guys. I'm not sure why I'm even making a Resident Evil 2 review at this point, because it feels fairly redundant. Prior to release, you had all of the pre-release reviews, people got their hands on it early, they played it fairly exhaustively, unless you were IGN, in which case, goddamn, do some due diligence, you absolute idiots. And the overwhelming opinion was that this was a pretty goddamn good remake, and then the game came out. And people agreed, this is a pretty goddamn good remake. So here I am, sitting here almost a week later post-release thinking, yeah, everyone's pretty much right. This is a goddamn fantastic remake. Capcom, well done. You have pretty much nailed the gold standard for what a remake should do. And it's not like they're strangers to this kind of thing. They had a huge amount of success with the Resi 1 remake, but here they actually took a few risks. Rather than attempting a one-for-one remake, sticking with the pre-rendered backgrounds and fixed cameras, they chose to retrofit Resident Evil 2, bringing a little bit of the more modern trappings into the more retro stylings of that game's structure. So rather than having some strange fixed omnipresent camera that flicks position depending on what room you're in, you now have a third-person over-the-shoulder perspective, something a lot closer to the likes of, say, the entries post-Resident Evil 4. Despite this, however, you are not able to roundhouse kick a zombie in the head, and despite people being fairly disappointed about that, I'm okay. This is the start of Leon S. Kennedy's illustrious career. This is our introduction to the likes of Claire Redfield. They're not superhuman zombie ass-kickers yet. They are scared, afraid, trying to desperately survive in a completely absurd situation. So yes, you're gonna either have to find inventive ways to weave between the zombies before they can grab you and chomp on your neck, or make use of the varied sub-weapons that you can equip, such as combat knives, flashbangs, and grenades. But really, Resident Evil isn't a game just about the zombies. I mean, sure, they play a pretty significant part, among other things, but don't worry, we'll get to those soon enough. For me, the other star of a Resident Evil game is the environment itself. Resident Evil 1 had the mansion up in the Arklay Mountains, and here we've got the Raccoon City Police Department. And oh boy, let me tell you, that place has never looked better. I mean, it looked pretty spiffy back in the day when it was all pre-rendered background, but it is something else entirely to see it brought to life in full 3D, being able to actually feel like you're within the environment rather than just viewing it from a distance. And honestly, it's that sense of immersion that really does bring it to life, doubly so when you're making those first tentative steps through the dark and damp corridors where you just know at any moment one of the undead is gonna rise and try to eat your face. It's all about confidence. It's all about confidence. Ah, fucking... I'm not gonna lie, I was actually afraid. The tension was high, and I was literally jumping at shadows. I mean, you really have to marvel at the lighting effects here, courtesy, of course, of the Re-engine. Or is it RE engine? Can never quite figure that out. But in any case, it's the same engine that powered the visual splendor and murk and just plain disgusting bodily fluid horror that was Resident Evil 7. And yeah, it's a real nice fit. It's a glorious fit. There's something just extremely visceral about the way this engine brings this environment to life. And what would the environment be, of course, without the inhabitants to go along with it? As I said, I'd be getting back to the zombies and the various other creepy crawlies that inhabit Raccoon City Police Department. And, oh man, I was deathly afraid of lickers back in the day. I have a whole newfound fear of them now. It's just an endlessly unsettling thing to round a corner, aiming your flashlight up at the ceiling, and spotting it just lurking, waiting for you to make enough of a noise for it to leap on your face and claw you to pieces. All that said and done, I would be extremely remiss if I did not mention the hulking trenchcoat-wearing elephant in the room. or in the corridor, or bursting through the door, depending on where you are in Raccoon City Police Department. I am, of course, referring to Mr. X. I mean, good grief, what a fantastic inclusion this guy is. In the original Resident Evil 2, he was only present for a very specific playthrough, but here, he is much more prominent. In my case, during the Leon playthrough, he turned up when I put out the fire in the helicopter, and from that point onwards, he actively hunts you. Honestly, it's like you're being chased down by a Terminator. That is essentially what he is, and the real beauty of the way this is set up is that he does actively patrol, he does move around rooms, he does clomp around upstairs, downstairs, and all the while you can hear him doing so. If you're in the right part of the station, depending on how close he is, you will indeed hear those footsteps getting closer. And if you're wearing headphones or you've got a particularly good surround sound system, you'll be able to hear which direction he is coming from. And I've lost count of the moments where I've been waiting expectantly by a door, just expecting him to burst through and ruin my day. In counterpoint to that, there's a number of times where I've blundered quite haphazardly into a room and found him just waiting, just kind of loitering around, and then the music kicks in, and then the chase begins all over again. As you make your way through the police station, you do unlock more and more of it. You find more routes that you can circle round and double back through, and these prove absolutely invaluable for any of your encounters when dealing with Mr. X. What may seem like initially a very simple trip from one section to another can rapidly spiral into an elaborate route that will take you through corridors filled with enemies you didn't even want to touch to begin with, all because Mr. X decided it was time to rain on your parade. Jesus Christ! If there's something I'm quite happy to see preserved in this remake, it's the sense of interconnectedness you get between all of the varied environments you'll be making your way through during the course of Resident Evil 2, because believe it or not, the police station is not the be-all and end-all of what you have to get through. For example, at one part during the campaign, be it playing as Leon or Claire, your path will take you away from the police department, having you ultimately end up in the downright disgusting sewers that lurk below the Raccoon City streets. And I honestly thought I'd never get to see the police station again. My memory of the original game was very fuzzy, if I'm going to be honest, so it delighted me no end when I found a route from the sewers leading all the way back up to the police station, allowing me to loot the area once again and mop up any remaining supplies that I'd left behind, and it just felt good. It felt real good. Not to mention a tremendous relief too, because me being me, I chose to play on hardcore difficulty to start myself off, and that was largely motivated by nostalgia, because I noticed that some of the lower difficulties didn't actually require you to pick up ink ribbons in order to save your progress, whereas in hardcore, you do. The other aspect that I failed to account for, however, was the fact that enemies are much more dangerous as a result. If anything, this served to amplify the fear and tension that you may experience during, say, a normal difficulty playthrough, because those zombies, if you think they take a lot of bullets to the head to take down in normal, oh, wait till you try it on hardcore. Good grief. In terms of how the campaign is structured between the two main characters that you can pick, you'll find that if you choose a new game with Claire or Leon, they'll follow very similar paths up until a particular divergent point, be it Claire going to the orphanage or Leon going on a sewer adventure with Ada, but once you complete that first run, you'll get the option for a second, where you can swap over to the next character and experience a slightly different mix of events, item locations, and various other bits and pieces. Another few differences between the two is in the weaponry that you'll acquire. On Leon's side, things feel a little bit more low-key, more traditional first, such as shotguns, handguns, a magnum here and there, and a flamethrower. Can't forget about the flamethrower. That got me through some very tough times. But Claire, good grief, Claire in comparison is frickin' Rambo. So, just reeling this off from the top of my head, she's got the snub-nose handgun, then she's got the single-action army, then you can pick up a grenade launcher, you can then, after that, acquire a submachine gun, which can be upgraded, believe it or not. Then, you get the spark shot, which is a space taser. That's the best description I got. It's the description I'm sticking with. You fire it, you hold that sucker down, anything unfortunate enough to be on the receiving end is gonna go pop. Or at least turn a very particular shade of ultra crispy. Oh, and how could I possibly forget the snub-nose handgun? You can reinforce it and essentially turn it into a mini magnum. Good grief. Who needs Leon? Just send Claire into Raccoon City. She'll clear up that shit in no time at all. Honestly though, if you're anything like me, Resident Evil 2 is going to be a game that you can just replay over and over and over again. And it's a game that will actively reward you for doing so. Not only do you get the alternate scenarios that you can run through with each character, but upon completion of those, you'll unlock an extra game mode called the Fourth Survivor, which allows you to do this breathless, unbroken, action movie-style run from sewer to police station rooftop as an alpha team soldier called Hunt. He's armed to the teeth, it's got this awesome, propulsive music behind it, you feel like a legitimate badass the entire time, and it's short, but oh so sweet. And upon completion, you get to play as Tofu. This is Tofu, by the way. It's a block of tofu, armed with knives and a sweet hat. You heard me. Deal with it. So yeah, in conclusion, I'd say this is quite possibly one of the best remakes of a classic video game I have ever experienced. Maybe alongside the original Resident Evil 1 remake. I'd say they exist side by side as absolute paragons of what should be done with a classic remake. This is, to me, the gold standard. A tremendously fun, downright terrifying experience, especially in those first runs, that honors what made everything about the original special while bringing a lot of new bells and whistles into the foreground. It's something that I believe, if you're a fan of survival horror, you should absolutely not miss out on. While I'm at it, I'd like to give a great big thank you to my wonderful patrons over on Patreon. Thank you so very much for supporting the channel and for helping to make content like this possible. If you're interested in supporting the channel yourself, maybe you'd like to see your name in the credits, or maybe you'd like to get your hands on new editions of my videos before anyone else. If that's the case, you'll find the link to my Patreon page in the description below. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Feel free to let me know what you thought in the comments. And until next time, this has been Mr. Icarus. Thank you very much for watching. Icarus out.